Racist doctor refuses to treat black patient, is stunned when he's her new boss. Amina sat in the crowded hospital waiting room, her anxiety palpable as she clutched her medical records. She was a 38-year-old black woman, a single mother balancing work and parenting while struggling with severe abdominal pain that had gone undiagnosed for months. As she waited, she felt a deep sense of isolation, surrounded by other patients who seemed preoccupied with their own concerns. When the nurse finally called her name, Amina took a deep breath and walked into Dr. Hudson's office. The room was decorated with diplomas and accolades, a testament to the doctor's status. As she entered, Dr. Hudson, a middle-aged white man, barely looked up from his notes. He greeted her with a patronizing glance that made her stomach churn. "Let's hope you can manage to keep calm. What do you think it is, stress?" he asked dismissively. Amina's heart sank. She had come to him for help, not judgment. "I've been experiencing severe pain in my abdomen, and I need your help," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. Dr. Hudson's tone remained condescending as he continued to downplay her concerns. "Well, maybe you just need to take a break from your busy life. Sometimes, people like you just need to learn to relax." Amina felt the anger welling up inside her. "I know my body, and something is seriously wrong," she asserted, her voice steadier than she felt. "Maybe you should find a different doctor." "I can't help those who don't help themselves," Dr. Hudson retorted, his arrogance palpable. The conversation left Amina feeling humiliated and enraged. She stood her ground but felt the emotional toll of the encounter weighing heavily on her. As she stormed out of the office, she overheard Dr. Hudson laughing with a colleague, making disparaging remarks about patients like her. Once outside the hospital, Amina took a deep breath, grounding herself. Despite the frustration and disappointment, she felt a flicker of determination igniting within her. This encounter wouldn't be the end of her fight for justice. She deserved better than this treatment. Amina's frustration lingered long after she left the hospital. The humiliation she felt from Dr. Hudson's dismissive attitude fueled her resolve to take action. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, a bowl of cold food forgotten in front of her. Her two children, Malik and Zara, played in the other room, blissfully unaware of their mother's internal struggle. As she stared at her phone, scrolling through social media, she stumbled upon a community support group for patients advocating against discrimination in healthcare. With a deep breath, she joined the group, feeling a sense of solidarity with others who had experienced similar injustices. She began reading stories shared by members, finding comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. The next day, Amina reached out to her friend, Clara, who worked in the legal field. Clara was a fierce advocate for justice and had faced her share of discrimination as a black woman in a predominantly white workplace. Amina confided in her about the incident with Dr. Hudson, her voice trembling as she recounted the painful experience. "That's unacceptable, Amina," Clara replied, her voice firm. "You deserve to be treated with respect. We need to do something about this." Encouraged by Clara's response, Amina decided to take the next step. They arranged to meet at a local coffee shop to discuss their plan. As they sipped their drinks, Clara shared her experiences dealing with similar situations and offered Amina advice on how to document her experiences with Dr. Hudson. "We need to gather evidence," Clara said. "Keep a record of your visits, the conversations you have, and any other relevant details. If we want to challenge this, we'll need solid proof of the discrimination you faced." Amina nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead. She pulled out her notebook and began writing down every detail she could remember from her appointment with Dr. Hudson. Clara helped her brainstorm potential witnesses, including the nurse who had called her in and anyone else who might have seen or heard what transpired. As the days passed, Amina's determination grew. She began attending meetings of the support group, where she found strength in sharing her story with others. Each meeting reinforced her belief that she had the right to seek justice, not just for herself but for anyone who had faced discrimination in healthcare. During one of these meetings, Amina met Marcus, a community activist passionate about social justice. He was charismatic and inspiring, and his words resonated deeply with her. He encouraged Amina to use her voice and amplify her story to raise awareness. "You have the power to create change," Marcus said. "Your experience can help others who feel powerless." Let's make sure your story is heard. Inspired by Marcus's energy, Amina began to feel a sense of purpose. She knew that confronting Dr. Hudson would not only impact her life but could also contribute to a larger movement for change. Together, she and Marcus discussed ways to reach out to local media outlets and share her story, ensuring it gained the attention it deserved. Meanwhile, Amina continued documenting her experiences. She wrote down her interactions with Dr. Hudson and the emotions that surfaced during those moments. Each entry became a release for her frustrations, transforming her pain into a powerful narrative. The more she shared her story, the more she began to see the broader implications of her struggle. Amina realized that the discrimination she faced was part of a larger systemic issue that affected many people in her community. This realization fueled her resolve even further. As Amina prepared to take her next steps, she faced moments of doubt. There were times when she questioned whether her actions would make a difference. But each time she thought about her children and the world she wanted them to grow up in, she pushed those doubts aside. On a particularly challenging day, Amina received a call from Clara. "I've been thinking about how we can approach this legally," Clara said. "We could file a formal complaint with the medical board. They take these matters seriously, and it could open doors for more people to come forward." Amina felt a rush of hope. "Yes, that's exactly what we need to do," she replied. They set a date to meet with the medical board, preparing to present Amina's case. The thought of confronting Dr. Hudson in a formal setting both excited and terrified her. As the meeting day approached, Amina spent nights going over her notes, practicing her speech in front of the mirror. She wanted to convey not just her personal pain but also the broader implications of her experiences. She envisioned herself standing confidently in front of the board, speaking not just for herself but for all those who had been marginalized. On the day of the meeting, Amina arrived early, her heart racing with anticipation. She wore a tailored suit that made her feel empowered, a symbol of her determination to be taken seriously. As she sat in the waiting area, she felt the weight of her mission. This was more than just about her. It was about justice for everyone who had faced discrimination. When her name was called, Amina walked into the conference room, her head held high. She saw a panel of officials sitting in front of her, their expressions neutral but attentive. A sense of urgency filled the air as she prepared to share her story. As she began speaking, she felt the weight of the words she had rehearsed so many times. She recounted her experience with Dr. Hudson, highlighting not only his dismissive comments but also how they had affected her life. Amina emphasized the importance of accountability in the medical profession and the need for change in the healthcare system. The officials listened intently, and she could see the impact her words were having. She felt a surge of empowerment, realizing that she was not just a victim, she was a force for change. After her testimony, the officials thanked her for her courage and assured her that they would investigate her claims. As Amina left the meeting, she felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. She had taken a significant step toward confronting the injustice she faced. In the days that followed, Amina's story gained traction in the community. Local media outlets picked up the story, interviewing her and highlighting the issues of discrimination in healthcare. The support she received from the community was overwhelming, with many sharing their own experiences and standing in solidarity with her. Amina's determination to fight back against Dr. Hudson had sparked a movement. The more she spoke out, the more people began to rally around her, united in their call for change. Her courage inspired others to share their stories, creating a ripple effect that reached far beyond her own experience. As she continued to advocate for herself and others, Amina felt a deep sense of purpose. She was no longer just a patient seeking medical help. She had become a voice for the voiceless, someone who was not afraid to stand up against injustice. This newfound strength transformed her into an empowered individual ready to confront the challenges ahead. The journey was far from over, but Amina knew that she was not alone. With Clara, Marcus, and a community rallying behind her, she felt more equipped than ever to face Dr. Hudson and demand the respect she deserved. In the weeks following her testimony, Amina felt a mix of anxiety and determination as she continued her fight against Dr. Hudson. The initial shock of stepping into the spotlight had worn off, but the reality of what lay ahead began to sink in. With Clara's guidance, Amina immersed herself in research about the medical board's processes and the steps involved in filing a formal complaint. One afternoon, Amina and Clara met at a local library, a quiet place filled with the rustle of pages turning and the soft hum of conversations. They settled at a table surrounded by stacks of books and resources. Clara pulled out a folder filled with information about medical ethics, patient rights, and legal precedents related to discrimination in healthcare. First, we need to understand exactly what our options are, Clara said, organizing the papers. We'll need to build a solid case that outlines how Dr. Hudson's actions violated your rights as a patient. Amina nodded, flipping through the pages. I just want to make sure we do this right. I don't want to waste anyone's time. Clara smiled reassuringly. This is important, Amina. You're doing this for yourself and for others. Every detail counts. As they worked, Amina began to see the layers of the healthcare system more clearly. The challenges were daunting, but with Clara's support, she felt empowered. They discussed strategies for gathering more evidence, including reaching out to other patients who had faced discrimination and seeking statements from medical professionals who could vouch for Amina's competence and character. I want to highlight not just what happened in that office, but also the systemic issues that allowed it to happen, Amina said, her voice filled with conviction. Exactly, Clara replied. We can showcase how your experience is part of a larger pattern, which can help pressure the board to take action. With a clear plan in mind, Amina began reaching out to her community for support. She posted in the online support group, asking for anyone willing to share their own experiences with Dr. Hudson or similar cases of discrimination. The response was overwhelming. Many people came forward, sharing their stories of feeling dismissed or belittled by healthcare professionals. With each story, Amina's resolve grew stronger. She realized how pervasive this issue was, not just within her experience but throughout the community. These testimonials would serve as vital evidence for her case. As Amina compiled the accounts, she also sought out allies within the medical community. She reached out to local healthcare advocates and organizations focused on patient rights. At a community health fair, Amina met Dr. Rodriguez, a passionate physician dedicated to combating discrimination in healthcare. I've heard about your situation, and I want to help, Dr. Rodriguez said. It's crucial that we stand together against this kind of behavior. Amina felt a wave of relief wash over her. Dr. Rodriguez offered to write a letter of support detailing Amina's treatment and the broader implications of Dr. Hudson's actions. This endorsement from a respected physician could carry significant weight in her case. As the weeks passed, Amina's preparations intensified. Clara helped her draft the formal complaint to the medical board, ensuring every detail was meticulously documented. They worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and determination, poring over notes, evidence, and testimonials. One evening, as they reviewed the complaint, Clara looked up from her papers. Amina, this is powerful. You're not just presenting your story, you're presenting a case for change. This could have a real impact. Amina felt a surge of pride. I just want to make sure that no one else has to go through what I did. Finally, after countless revisions and discussions, the complaint was ready. Amina felt a mix of emotions as she printed the final copy, the weight of her journey reflected in those pages. It was more than just a document. It was a testament to her struggle, a declaration that she would not be silenced. The day they filed the complaint felt monumental. Amina stood outside the medical board's office with Clara by her side, her heart pounding with anticipation. The building loomed ahead, a symbol of the authority they were challenging. Are you ready? Clara asked, her voice steady. Amina nodded, taking a deep breath. Ready as I'll ever be. As they walked inside, Amina felt a mixture of fear and determination. The receptionist took their documents, and Amina watched as the weight of her journey transferred from her hands to the boards. In the weeks that followed, Amina continued to build her case. The medical board launched an investigation into Dr. Hudson, interviewing patients and staff. Amina also began preparing for the possibility of a public hearing, knowing that this could be a critical moment for her and her community. Throughout this process, Amina remained in close contact with Clara, who provided guidance and reassurance. We're making progress, Amina. Every step counts, Clara reminded her. As the hearing approached, Amina felt a whirlwind of emotions. She knew this was a pivotal moment not just for her case but for the many individuals who had faced similar discrimination. She immersed herself in preparation, practicing her statements and visualizing the impact she hoped to make. In the days leading up to the hearing, Amina felt a growing sense of urgency. She reached out to those who had shared their stories, inviting them to attend the hearing as supporters. Amina wanted them to know that they were not alone and that their voices mattered. When the day of the hearing arrived, Amina stood outside the venue, her heart racing. She wore a tailored dress that made her feel confident and powerful, a reminder of her commitment to seeking justice. As she entered the room, she saw a panel of officials seated before her, ready to hear her story. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Amina could feel the presence of her supporters behind her, giving her the strength to move forward. As she began to speak, Amina shared her experience in vivid detail, recounting the day she was dismissed by Dr. Hudson. She emphasized the impact of his words and actions, not just on her but on countless others who had faced similar treatment. The officials listened intently, and Amina could see their expressions shift as she spoke. She felt the power of her voice resonating in the room, a force for change and accountability. Discrimination in healthcare is not just an individual issue, it's a systemic problem, Amina declared, her voice rising with passion. We need to hold professionals accountable for their actions, and we must create an environment where every patient is treated with respect and dignity. As she concluded her testimony, the room erupted in applause, the energy shifting in her favor. Amina felt a rush of empowerment, knowing that her words had made an impact. In the days that followed, the medical board announced their findings from the investigation. Amina's complaint had sparked a thorough review of Dr. Hudson's practices, and the board implemented new policies aimed at addressing discrimination in healthcare. The outcome of the hearing validated Amina's fight for justice and brought attention to an issue that had long been ignored. She received countless messages of support from community members, encouraging her to continue advocating for change. Feeling a sense of fulfillment, Amina reflected on her journey. She had faced her fears and fought for herself and others, and now she was determined to keep the momentum going. With Clara and her new allies by her side, Amina began organizing community workshops focused on patient rights, empowerment, and the importance of advocating for oneself in healthcare. She wanted to ensure that others would have the knowledge and resources to stand up against discrimination. As the workshops gained popularity, Amina felt a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that her fight was far from over. It was only just beginning. Together, they were creating a movement that would transform the healthcare system for future generations. The day of the hearing arrived, a day that Amina had been preparing for tirelessly. The air was thick with tension as she stepped into the grand meeting room, where the medical board members awaited her testimony. The room buzzed with the low murmur of conversations, the weight of the moment palpable. Amina could feel her heart racing as she glanced around, spotting familiar faces among her supporters, friends, family, and community members who had rallied behind her cause. As she took her place at the front of the room, she felt the support of Clara and Dr. Rodriguez beside her, giving her the strength she needed. Amina's palms were sweaty, but she reminded herself of the countless hours of preparation and the importance of her mission. This was not just about her. It was about the systemic issues plaguing the healthcare system. The chairperson of the board called the meeting to order, and Amina's stomach churned with anticipation. We are here today to hear the case brought forward by Ms. Amina Ellis regarding her experience with Dr. Samuel Hudson, the chairperson announced. Ms. Ellis, you may proceed. Taking a deep breath, Amina began her testimony. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am here to share my story and to advocate for the rights of patients who have faced discrimination in healthcare. She recounted the incident that had triggered her fight for justice, painting a vivid picture of the day she walked into Dr. Hudson's office. When I walked in, I was hopeful. I had trusted this doctor to treat me with the respect and care that every patient deserves. Instead, I was met with disdain and prejudice. As Amina spoke, she could see the faces of the board members shifting, some showing signs of empathy, while others appeared skeptical. But she pressed on, fueled by her determination. She detailed Dr. Hudson's dismissive comments and the emotional toll it had taken on her. The words of a doctor carry weight. When Dr. Hudson told me that he didn't believe I deserved treatment, it wasn't just a rejection, it was an attack on my humanity. This is a reality that many face, and it must be addressed, Amina stated, her voice steady and strong. The chairperson nodded, indicating for her to continue. Amina shared testimonials from other patients who had experienced similar discrimination, their voices echoing through the room, amplifying her own. She described the systemic failures that allowed Dr. Hudson's behavior to persist unchecked. I am not just standing up for myself. I am standing up for every person who has been belittled or ignored because of their race. We must hold medical professionals accountable for their actions, Amina declared, feeling the energy shift in the room. As she concluded her testimony, Amina saw several members of the board exchanging glances, whispering to one another. The audience erupted into applause, and Amina felt a wave of empowerment wash over her. She had shared her truth, and it resonated with those present. Following her testimony, the board members called Dr. Hudson to the stand. Amina's heart raced as she watched him enter the room, his demeanor confident, almost arrogant. He was met with the scrutinizing gaze of the board and the audience's palpable tension. Dr. Hudson, you have heard Ms. Ellis's testimony. How do you respond? The chairperson asked, his tone firm. Dr. Hudson shifted in his seat, his face betraying a flicker of irritation. I believe there has been a misunderstanding. I have always treated my patients with respect. If Ms. Ellis felt otherwise, I apologize, but I maintain that I acted in the best interest of my patients. Amina felt a surge of anger at his dismissive attitude. This was not just about her feelings, it was about the lives he impacted. You don't get to downplay my experience, Dr. Hudson. Your actions have consequences, Amina interjected, her voice ringing out strong and clear. The chairperson raised a hand, reminding Amina to let Dr. Hudson finish. I stand by my medical decisions. I treat all my patients equally, and I don't discriminate based on race, Dr. Hudson continued, his tone defensive. Amina could feel the tension in the room escalating. But you did discriminate, Dr. Hudson. You may not see it, but your words and actions reflect a larger issue in the medical community. Patients like me are denied care every day because of prejudices that should have no place in medicine. Dr. Hudson glanced nervously at the board members, sensing the shift in the room. Amina continued to hold her ground, determined to expose the truth. She had faced too much to let him off the hook now. Isn't it true that you have received complaints from other patients regarding your treatment of them? And isn't it also true that some of these complaints involved racial bias? Amina pressed, her voice unwavering. The board members began to take notes, their expressions serious. Dr. Hudson stammered, "Those complaints are taken out of context. I have always prioritized my patients' health." But Amina was ready for this. She had gathered evidence of previous complaints, and she presented them to the board. Here are the records of patients who felt dismissed or belittled by your actions. This is a pattern, and it cannot be ignored. The room fell silent as the board members reviewed the documents. Amina could feel the weight of the moment. She was challenging the very foundation of Dr. Hudson's credibility. The chairperson looked up from the papers, his expression grave. Dr. Hudson, these accusations are serious. How do you intend to address this evidence? Dr. Hudson's bravado faltered as the room shifted against him. I can assure you that my intent was never to harm anyone. I was simply trying to make decisions based on my medical expertise, he stammered. Amina seized the moment. Your expertise should not come at the cost of patient dignity. We deserve to be treated with respect, regardless of our backgrounds. And that is the message we need to send today. As the discussion continued, Amina could sense the board leaning toward the weight of her arguments. The tide was turning, and Amina felt a surge of hope. She was not just speaking for herself, she was speaking for countless others who had faced similar injustices. The chairperson called for a recess, allowing the board members to deliberate. Amina stepped outside, her heart racing. Clara and Dr. Rodriguez stood waiting for her, their faces filled with pride and support. You did it, Amina. You stood your ground, Clara exclaimed, her eyes shining with admiration. Dr. Rodriguez nodded in agreement. You spoke truth to power. No matter the outcome, you've made an impact. Amina felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. I couldn't have done this without you both. Thank you for believing in me. As they waited for the board's decision, Amina reflected on her journey. She had faced her fears, spoken her truth, and challenged a powerful figure in the medical community. No matter the outcome, she knew she had made a difference. After what felt like an eternity, the chairperson called everyone back into the room. Amina's heart pounded as she took her seat, the tension palpable. The board members exchanged glances, and Amina could sense the weight of their decision. After careful consideration of the evidence presented and the testimonies heard, we have reached a conclusion, the chairperson began. Dr. Hudson, we find that your actions and treatment of Ms. Ellis and other patients reflect a pattern of unprofessional behavior that cannot be overlooked. Amina held her breath, her heart racing. Effective immediately, we are suspending your medical license for a period of 6 months, during which time you will undergo mandatory training on patient care and discrimination, the chairperson continued, his voice firm. The room erupted into applause, Amina's heart swelling with pride and relief. She had fought for justice, and it was being served. Dr. Hudson's face fell, shock and anger replacing his earlier bravado. He shot Amina a glare filled with disdain, but she met his gaze with unwavering strength. As the applause echoed around her, Amina felt a wave of empowerment wash over her. This was not just a personal victory, it was a victory for all those who had been silenced. She had confronted discrimination head-on, and justice had prevailed. In the aftermath of the hearing, Amina became a local advocate for patient rights, sharing her story and encouraging others to speak out against discrimination in healthcare. She organized community events and workshops to empower patients, ensuring that their voices were heard. As Amina looked around at the faces of her supporters, she felt a profound sense of purpose. Together, they were creating a movement that would change the landscape of healthcare, one voice at a time. The board's decision echoed in Amina's mind long after the meeting had concluded. She had walked out of the building feeling lighter, yet grounded in the knowledge that this was just the beginning of a larger fight. The applause and cheers from her supporters had filled her with pride, but now, as she stepped out into the bright sunlight, she could feel the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The following weeks were transformative. Amina's name became synonymous with patient advocacy in their community. News of her victory spread like wildfire, inspiring others who had faced similar injustices to come forward. Amina organized a town hall meeting, inviting community members to share their experiences with discrimination in healthcare. The turnout exceeded her expectations, with people from all walks of life showing up to speak. During one session, a woman named Tara shared her story of being denied care due to her weight, another form of discrimination that Amina had not fully considered. Tara's raw emotion resonated with everyone present, reminding Amina that discrimination could take many forms. They all felt the weight of Tara's words. It was a reminder of how important it was to stand together against injustice. Thank you for your courage, Tara, Amina said, her voice steady. Every story matters. Each voice adds to the call for change. Together, we can make sure that no one else has to go through what we've experienced. As the meetings continued, Amina began collaborating with local healthcare professionals to develop training programs focused on cultural competency and empathy in patient care. They wanted to ensure that every healthcare provider in their community understood the importance of treating patients with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. The initiative quickly gained traction, and local clinics expressed interest in implementing these programs. Amid her activism, Amina received an unexpected phone call. It was from Dr. Rodriguez, who had been keeping her updated on the developments regarding Dr. Hudson. Amina, I have some news, she said, her tone serious. The medical board is planning to publish a report highlighting your case and the subsequent actions taken against Dr. Hudson. This could lead to wider changes in healthcare policies regarding discrimination. Amina felt a mix of emotions. She had initially feared that her fight would be limited to her own experience, but now it was clear that they had sparked a larger movement. What can I do to help? Amina asked, her determination renewed. Dr. Rodriguez explained that they needed Amina to participate in a press conference to discuss her story and the importance of accountability in the healthcare system. The idea was daunting, but Amina knew it was crucial. She agreed, and plans were set in motion for the event. On the day of the press conference, Amina stood before a sea of reporters, cameras flashing as they captured the moment. Her heart raced, but she felt fortified by the support of her friends and community members who had come to stand by her side. As she stepped up to the podium, she took a deep breath, reminding herself of the purpose behind her words. "Thank you all for being here today," Amina began, her voice steady and strong. "I stand before you not just as a patient but as a voice for many who have been silenced. The healthcare system needs to change. Discrimination in any form is unacceptable, and we must hold ourselves accountable for the treatment of all patients." As she shared her story, Amina felt the weight of her experience transform into power. She spoke passionately about the need for systemic change, emphasizing that the medical profession must prioritize empathy and respect in patient care. "Every person deserves to be treated with dignity," she declared. "We can no longer turn a blind eye to discrimination." The press conference concluded with resounding applause, and Amina felt a sense of accomplishment. She had taken her experience and transformed it into a rallying cry for justice. In the weeks that followed, news articles began to surface, showcasing her story and the broader implications of Dr. Hudson's actions. However, Dr. Hudson was not taking his suspension quietly. He had hired a lawyer and was appealing the decision, claiming it was an unfair punishment. News of his appeal added fuel to the fire, and Amina knew they had to stay vigilant. The media coverage intensified, and Amina used the opportunity to continue advocating for change, pushing for support from lawmakers to strengthen anti-discrimination policies in healthcare. The community rallied around her, signing petitions and attending rallies to show their support for Amina and her cause. The momentum was building, and Amina felt invigorated by the unity she witnessed. "This is what empowerment looks like," she told her supporters at a rally, her voice echoing through the crowd. "Together, we can create a future where everyone is treated fairly, regardless of their background." As the weeks turned into months, the battle against Dr. Hudson continued, but Amina remained resolute. She received letters of support from patients across the state, many of whom expressed gratitude for her bravery in speaking out. The words filled her with hope and reminded her that she was not alone in this fight. Finally, the day of Dr. Hudson's appeal hearing arrived. Amina stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by supporters holding signs that read "Justice for Patients" and "No More Discrimination." She felt a sense of solidarity as they cheered for her. This was not just about her. It was about everyone who had suffered in silence. Inside the courthouse, Amina took her place in the audience as the proceedings began. Dr. Hudson's lawyer presented his case, arguing that the medical board's decision was overly harsh and that Amina was simply exaggerating her experience. Amina felt a mix of anger and determination as she listened to the defense's attempts to downplay her pain. When it was her turn to speak, Amina stood before the judges, her heart pounding. "Your Honor, I urge you to consider not just my experience but the experiences of countless others who have been denied care based on race or any form of discrimination. We cannot allow this behavior to go unchecked," she stated firmly. As she spoke, Amina saw the judges listening intently, their expressions thoughtful. She poured her heart into her words, recounting the impact of Dr. Hudson's actions on her life and the lives of others. The room was heavy with emotion, and Amina knew she was making a difference. After hours of deliberation, the judges emerged to announce their decision. Amina held her breath, her heart racing. "We find that the medical board's decision to suspend Dr. Hudson's license was justified. His actions represent a failure to uphold the standards of care expected in the medical profession," the lead judge announced. The courtroom erupted into applause, and Amina felt tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. They had won, not just for her but for everyone who had faced discrimination in healthcare. The victory felt monumental, a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for what is right. In the aftermath, Amina received a flood of media attention, and her advocacy work only gained momentum. She was invited to speak at conferences and forums, where she shared her story and inspired others to join the fight for equality in healthcare. One evening, as she was reflecting on her journey, Amina received a call from Clara. "Amina, I have some incredible news," Clara exclaimed. "There's a bill being introduced in the state legislature aimed at enhancing anti-discrimination policies in healthcare, and they want you to be the keynote speaker." Amina's heart soared at the thought of being able to advocate for systemic change on such a grand scale. "This is amazing, Clara. I would be honored," she replied, excitement bubbling within her. As she prepared for the speech, Amina felt a deep sense of purpose. She understood that her fight was far from over, but she had become a beacon of hope for others. The journey had transformed her, and she was committed to ensuring that every patient received the respect and care they deserved. The day of the speech arrived, and Amina stood before a packed audience of lawmakers, advocates, and community members. She spoke passionately about the importance of creating a healthcare system that truly served everyone, regardless of their background. "Let us stand together and ensure that no one else has to endure the pain of discrimination," she urged, her voice resonating with conviction. "Together, we can build a future where every patient is treated with dignity and respect. This is our fight, and we will not back down." As Amina concluded her speech, the room erupted in applause. She felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. She had turned her pain into power, transforming her experience into a force for good. In the months that followed, Amina became a prominent figure in the fight for healthcare equality, her story inspiring countless others. She had emerged not just as a survivor but as a leader, dedicated to ensuring that the systemic issues she had faced would be addressed. Amina's journey had come full circle. She had confronted her antagonist and achieved justice, but more importantly, she had sparked a movement that would impact generations to come. As she stood among her supporters, Amina knew that together they would continue to fight for a world where everyone, regardless of their background, would receive the care and respect they deserved. In her heart, she carried the knowledge that change was possible. And as the sun set on that chapter of her life, she was filled with hope for the future, a future where every patient could walk into a doctor's office and feel safe, respected, and valued. As we wrap up Amina's inspiring journey, let her story remind us of the power of standing up against injustice. Each of us has the potential to make a difference in our communities, and it starts with raising our voices. If you've experienced discrimination or know someone who has, don't stay silent. Share your story, seek support, and advocate for change. Together, we can create a healthcare system that treats everyone with dignity and respect. Join the movement for equality and empowerment, share this video with your friends and family, and encourage them to speak out against discrimination. Let's spread awareness and work towards a future where every patient receives the care they deserve. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and justice, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, we can make a difference. Your voice matters. Let it be heard.